Welcome to Bed Crime Stories Podcast. I'm your host, T. To my bed crimers, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. Thank you for joining me. To anyone new here, a warm welcome. Thank you so much for checking out my channel. Let me just ask that after listening to or watching the video, if you learned something or if it caused you to think a little, do me a favor, smash the like button. Now, let's dig in. Alex Murdaugh, who is currently on trial for the untimely and savage deaths of his wife Margaret and his son Paul, had an interesting day on June 7th, 2021, the day of the crime. It was a particularly balmy day in South Carolina's low country. The high was 84 degrees Fahrenheit, according to the Murdaughs' housekeeper, Blanca Terubiet Simpson. Alec left home wearing khaki pants, a seafoam polo shirt, and a dark blue sports coat. After Alec departed the family's home known as Moselle, Blanca received a text from Alec's wife, Margaret, who was then staying at the family's beach cottage in Adesto. In the text, Margaret explained that she and her 22-year-old son, Paul, had been summoned by Alec to the Moselle Hunting Lodge property in Islandton. Margaret told Blanca that she had a doctor's appointment and that Alec wanted her to come home to Moselle that night so that she could go with him and visit his father Randolph in the hospital. Margaret asked Blanca if she could prepare a dinner of cube steak, gravy and rice and green beans for the family. Blanca obliged, made the meal, and left it on the stove in a pot. Back to Alec. He arrived midday at the family law firm known as PMPED in Hampton, South Carolina. Such a late arrival was not unusual for Alec. Per several colleagues who've testified in the trial, Murdaugh often turned up later in the morning for work, and he was often in a frenetic state. In addition, several witnesses have said that Alec was always on his cell phone, and it was hard to get him to sit down for any length of time. Janine Seckinger, who was in charge of bookkeeping at the firm, cornered Alec that day outside his office, and she demanded to know the whereabouts of nearly $800,000 in missing legal fees for a case he handled. That conversation was interrupted when a call came into Alec's phone. From the call, Alec learned that his father, Randolph, had just been given a dire medical prognosis. Alec was told he was needed at the hospital. He promptly left the firm, leaving Seckinger without answers. 4 hours later, at 4:10 p.m., Alec turned back up at the law firm and asked Seckinger questions related to his 401k. Alec told Seckinger that he was working on his financial records for an upcoming hearing scheduled for June 10th on the boat crash lawsuit. That lawsuit was into Paul Murdaugh's 2019 boat crash, in which 19-year-old Mallory Beach died as a result of Paul's drunk piloting of the boat. Alec's cell phone places him at the law firm from 4:10 p.m. to 6:25 p.m. At 4:35 p.m., Alec places a FaceTime call to his wife Margaret, but it goes unanswered. A SLED agent testified that the record of this FaceTime call was later manually deleted from Alec's phone. Meanwhile, Margaret's cell phone from 4:25 p.m. to 7:05 p.m. places her in the West Ashley area near Charleston. As for Paul Murdaugh, from 5:30 p.m. to 6:09 p.m., his phone places him in Okatee, South Carolina. According to Google Maps, it should take about 55 minutes to drive from Okatee to Islandton, where the family's hunting lodge, Moselle, is located. From 6:17 to 6:53 p.m., Paul Murdaugh's phone shows him traveling from Okatee to Moselle. At 6:40 p.m., Alex Murdaugh's phone places him at Moselle. It would appear that from roughly 6:53 p.m. until 8:06 p.m., Paul and Alec were hanging out together on the Moselle property, driving around, looking at trees they planted. As they're doing this, at 7:05 p.m., Alec texts Margaret and says, "Paul says you're getting a pedi. Call when you get done," end quote. From 7:07 to 7:50 p.m., Maggie's phone places her traveling from North Charleston, taking Highway 17 toward Moselle. From 7:45 p.m. to 7:56 p.m., Paul's phone places him by the dog kennels on the Moselle property. It's likely that Alex Murdaugh was with him. At 7:56 p.m., Paul sends a Snapchat video to one of his friends. In the video, his father, Alec, is shown looking at a tree that they had planted. The tree is bending over, and Paul can be heard in the background laughing and talking to his father. By 7:50 p.m., Margaret's phone is in Walterboro, roughly a half hour away from Moselle. So she should have arrived home to Moselle roughly around 8:15 or 8:20 p.m. At 8:06 p.m., Paul's phone begins moving from the dog kennels to the main house. From 8:09 to 9:02 p.m., Alex's phone shows no steps. This indicates that the phone was not moving during that period. This would be when he was inside the family's Moselle home, he meaning Alec. Margaret arrived around 8:15, as I said, or 8:20, and the three family members, Alec, Paul, and Margaret, ate their cube steak dinner. They finished eating around 8:30 p.m. or a little after. At 8:31 p.m., Alec's sister, Lynn Murdaugh, sends a text to all family members about Randolph Murdaugh's failing health. Margaret reads the text a few seconds later. Alec doesn't read this important text about his dying father until the next day at 1:44 p.m. Red flag. At 8:38 p.m., Paul's phone has him back at the dog kennels. At 8:44 p.m., Paul makes his now infamous Snapchat video of his friend Rogan Gibson's chocolate Labrador named Cash. Roughly at 8:50 p.m., the carnage began, at least according to the prosecution. Paul and Margaret die within minutes of each other. Each is done in by more than one wound, and each victim is attacked with a different weapon. Paul has 2 wounds, one to his chest, another to his arm and head. Margaret has 5 wounds. We know she was moving as her attacker followed her. Is that why she has more wounds than Paul? Or do those wounds indicate overkill? Both victims were done in at close range. Alex Murdaugh tells the police that from around 8:30 p.m. until 9:06 p.m., he was sleeping on a couch inside the main house, although we've now heard from 5 witnesses who knew the Murdaugh family well, and they all say that Alex's voice is 100% the third voice heard on Paul's 8:44 p.m. Snapchat video. Starting at 9 p.m., Alex Murdaugh, the only person still breathing at Moselle at that point, if we are to believe the prosecution, begins calling people, including his hospitalized father Randolph, several friends, and even Margaret. At 9:06 p.m., according to data from Alex's Chevy Suburban truck, the vehicle is taken out of park and it begins moving. This is when Alec drove to his parents' home in Varnville. Along that drive, Alec keeps phoning various friends and family members. At 9:08 p.m., Alec texts Margaret this, and I quote, "Going to check on M. Be right back," end quote. The M stands for mother. At 9:11 p.m., Alec's friend Chris Wilson briefly speaks to Alec. Wilson is busy working on a broken pool pump on his outside porch with his wife. They are also watching The Bachelor. At 9:20 p.m., Wilson calls Alec back. Alec tells him that he's just arrived at his parents' house and he'll call Wilson back a little later. At 9:22 p.m., Alec's SUV data indicates he arrived somewhere. The truck remains in park for 20 minutes. At 9:43 p.m., the truck is taken out of park. This is likely when Alec left his parents' house and headed back to Moselle. All along that drive, Alec is texting and calling friends and family. At 9:47 p.m., Alec texts Margaret and says, "Call me, babe." At that point, Margaret and Paul were likely deceased for nearly 1 hour. At 9:52 p.m., Alec texts Wilson and says, "Call me if you're up." Wilson called him back immediately. Alec did not pick up, at least for a while. Eventually, he answered. In a police interview, Alec says that when he arrived back at Moselle, he drove straight to the main house and then noticed that Paul and Margaret were not back from the dog kennels. At that point, Alec says he drove to the kennels, and his SUV data supports this. At 10:06 p.m., Alec dialed 911. First responders show up at 10:29 p.m. They encounter an upset but not crying Alex Murdaugh at the dog kennels. Soon, some of Alec's closest friends and colleagues arrive at Moselle. Alec's first police interview takes place about 3 hours after he dialed 911. That would make it around 1:06 a.m. At some point, Alec, along with his son Buster and Buster's girlfriend, decide to drive to Alec's parents' house for the night. One has to wonder if they managed to get any sleep that night. Until the next time on Bed Crime Stories, do me a favor, smash that like button, subscribe to my channel, leave me a comment, consider a membership, and I'll see you next time.